Yeah, no, I'm not ready to smash this one up yet. I brought it out here to do a little bit of a show and tell, like I did before with the amplifier that actually drives these speakers. And after that, I did my sub amp that I brought out and I actually tested it to see if it still works, because it's been several years since it was plugged in. If you haven't seen those videos, there's a link in the description to go check those out. This is the speakers that I made a long time ago, and they are what you could call my main speakers. They sit in my living room, and they're connected to that amplifier that I made before. And that amplifier is connected to an electronic crossover, and that electronic crossover is then in turn connected to my computer. So this is what I listen to everything on: YouTube videos, movies, shows, music, whatever happens to be on the computer. This is what I listen to them with. Standing here, these represent a huge amount of work, and I can't even begin to calculate how much, actually, because it's not only the work involved in building something like this, it's all the research that goes into it before you do any of that, so that you're building something that's actually good. Now, in this case, what I have here is a three-way speaker. This is the woofer. Down here, I'm pretty sure this is a Sees, that's the manufacturer. It's called SEAS, Sees, from Norway. And this mid-range here, I'm not sure. Actually, it might be Sees again. But the tweeter up here, I'm pretty sure is ScanSpeak, and was quite a pricey thing. I think it was over $200 for this tweeter alone. And totally lost on me, completely lost on me, because my hearing shot. And even at the time, my hearing wasn't great. So, but it's all about using the best components that you possibly can. Now I'm going to rotate it so you can see the shape here. This front here is curved. It's made from MDF, actually 2 layers of 5/8 inch MDF that were screwed onto the MDF base that the box that this cabinet is made from. What you see out here is actually plywood that's been veneered, but that went on after. There's a whole lot to this, but this is the MDF front, and the finish that I have on here was quite a chore too. I started off by priming it first, I don't know, 8 coats of sprayed on with a spray gun. Trem clad, just this oil paint you buy in the home center, trem clad primer. I sprayed that on 8 coats, or it might be in a spray can, I can't remember. Anyway, gray to begin with, and then I let that dry for several days, and then I put on the first of several coats of black gloss trem clad. And my idea at the time was to put on enough of that so that I could wet sand it and polish it. And that worked out fairly well, but I wasn't entirely happy with the results. So what I did was I bought this black epoxy type urethane paint that I painted them again with, sprayed on, I don't know, 4 or 5 coats, but it was water-based, so it went on fast and it dried fast, and that's the resulting finish that you see here. This is what's known as piano black. And I'm happy with the results, although it's very difficult to maintain. I mean, you have to be out dusting this thing every day for it to look, like this. As a matter of fact, it was caked with dust before I brought it out here, and I had to wash it all off. Anyway, so what I was thinking about doing with this was building a pair of grills. This is something I was meaning to do immediately after finishing the speakers. Grills are nice to keep the dust off the speakers themselves. A lot of people don't like grills because they say that it causes diffraction. Diffraction is a kind of distortion that may or may not exist for people. I personally wouldn't be able to hear it, so that's off the table. So The bigger issue is to keep the drivers clean. Every time I have to clean this, I have to get in there with a cloth, a damp cloth, wipe them off. And I have a brush that I have to get in and brush that extremely expensive tweeter with. I don't know if they still make it, but you know, it's a lot of work. I was going to make grills, but in order to make grills for this, they have to be curved to match the front, which is going to be a little bit of a challenge. In fact, I was thinking about making grills for the speakers that I just finished making before I made these, but I was thinking that I should make a quick video and come out here and talk a little bit about audiophile type stuff and bring this out and talk about it while I'm out here. What I'll do is I'll make a pattern while I have this out here. I'll have to bring the other one out as well and do the same thing. Even though the curves that are on here should be the same for both, it's almost impossible for them to be identical because everything was hand cut with the jigsaw, like the box is cut with the jigsaw, and then these parts were put on and everything was sanded. So there is some variation from one to the other that I would have to make up for with the grill. Now, as for the grill, I don't have a solid idea for this one, but I really do for the ones I just finished. And I think that would be interesting. As interesting as people find that topic. I'm actually surprised that the build video on the speakers got, I think it's 62,000 views to now, which I didn't expect because they're speakers. I mean, I know they look good and all, and it's woodworking, but a lot of people see the fact that it's something that they're not going to build and they won't watch the video. So the video did reasonably well. I uploaded the one for the, or I didn't upload it this morning. I uploaded that particular video twice actually. The first time it got a copyright strike against it because of music I used, which was music I had a clear license on, but like I could dispute it, but the chances are that it would be rejected by whoever made the claim because that seems to be what they do now. They automatically reject the claim. And of course, YouTube just accepts that and goes with it. It's okay, here's the money from the video that this guy worked his ass off to make. You can have it. Even though he paid for the music, that's okay. You can have the money. Not that it amounts to a great amount, but you know, I live by the margins here with this stuff, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there. It all adds up, and that's how I pay the bills. Anyway, so the video this morning had a number of comments, and the build video on the speaker itself didn't get as many as I expected, but maybe the right people haven't watched it yet. Audio, especially what's termed high-end audio, is like, I don't know, it's like the title says, and I know the title is a little bit of clickbait, but it literally is. I mean, it's this deep. It's up to your chin in bullshit. I mean, you can't walk. You can't walk. You can't wade through the bullshit. You can't move. It's like quicksand. You're up to here with the bullshit when you get into that stuff. And that was like the problem. I mean, a long time ago, I had the illusion that I would at some point start making speakers commercially. And I talked about this in another video a couple of years ago. But the more I researched the topic, the more I came to the realization that there is no way that you can make a product, a high-end, so-called high-end product, and sell it to these people unless you're willing to indulge fully, and you have to present it in a way that they're going to be convinced that you believe it as well. All of the bullshit, basically, that surrounds the subject. All right, I'm going to turn the speaker around a little bit more so you can see the back. I know I didn't finish talking about the audio foolery, but we'll get into more of that. This is a, actually I said it's a three-way. It's kind of a 3.5 way because there are two tweeters. There's another tweeter up here that fires backwards. And supposedly This will give the sound more presence in the high end. And like I said, my hearing is toast, so I wouldn't be able to tell. But I could, I did have a problem with the mid-range. Originally, I put it in a sealed box, a sealed chamber on the inside. But afterwards, I opened that up on the back, and that's what this fancy-looking grill here on the back is. This is actually hardboard, just like this, that I drilled out like that, and this cloth on the inside in here. So this is open on the inside. It's got some rock wool insulation in there, and what this does is it allows that mid-range driver to operate more or less in free air, because I was finding it was giving me a little bit of a boxy sound with the tests that I did, like the actual frequency measurements, because I was really into this. Remember, I had the gear all set up for it. It showed a peak in the mid-range, so doing this solved that. It made it sound much smoother. The box itself started out as sealed, very much like the ones that I just finished building, and that's a good approach if you want to have a smaller box. And the speakers, the woofers themselves, are spec'd for that type of box. In both cases, for that woofer on those small ones and for this woofer right here, it will work with both arrangements, either sealed or vented. And that's eventually what I did with this. I was finding that I wasn't getting the amount of low end that I wanted from these. So I did add the vents, and you can see those. There's two of those down on the bottom here. And yes, indeed, the bass did go up, not by a huge amount, but by just enough to make them sound a little bit fuller for what I was using them for. And what else can I talk about while I'm back here? The speaker plate, you can see there are 3 sets of banana jacks, and that's for the bottom ones are for the woofer, the middle one's for the mid-range, and the top one is for the tweeters. And that's because this doesn't have one of those crossovers that I made for the other speaker inside. It is has an active crossover. It's that digital crossover I mentioned before. Anyways, fascinating stuff. And I really should talk about the audio foolery a bit more, shouldn't I? Because that's supposedly what the video is about. I don't like to talk about it, though, honestly. I kind of read these comments and I get a little bit wound up a little bit. But, you know, I've been through all this before with the research and digging and all that. And I've read all that stuff before. And basically what it is aside from the stuff that's actual nonsense, like speaker cable stuff, like people spend literally tens of thousands of dollars just on the speaker cable that goes from the amplifier to the speaker. This stuff right here, okay? If I can get it, they spend tens of thousands of dollars. It has to be oxygen-free copper and has to be made in a special process and all this malarkey that really doesn't matter. People sit and they listen to the music that's coming out of these, and they get, oh, there's a little something, and they completely ignore every other thing that came in the chain. I mean, before, like from the time the music was created, I mean, you take a singer singing into a microphone, look at the quality of the microphone. Obviously, I mean, a studio has a good microphone, but would it be good enough for these guys? And then it goes into like a mixer and all the electronics in between and all the recording process. I mean, it's ludicrous when you think about it. Anyway, so aside from that obvious to anybody sensible, that is, malarkey, there's the other stuff as well. There is the minutia of this, where all of the very minor issues are held under a magnifying glass. Like I answered a comment on the video this morning saying that, in my opinion, the speakers, the drivers, like the woofer, mid-range tweeter, the selection of those and how well they match will take you 50% of the way. So that's 50% of it gone right there. There is a huge difference between quality, well-made speaker drivers and the run-of-the-mill garbage that you can get. So that's 50% of it right there. Another 30% is the box design itself. So yeah, the box will take you 30% more. That brings you up to 80%, at least 20%. And I figure the crossover is good for 19% more. It's important, but it's not as important as the driver selection, and it's certainly not as important as the box design itself, like the internal volume and all that stuff, or whether it's vented or sealed. A lot of guys will argue with me and say that the crossover is probably the most important, and they would probably be either the kind of guys that would buy that $50,000 speaker cable, or they would be crossover designers or guys that think that they are crossover designers. There's a lot to crossover design, don't get me wrong. And what I made for that speaker in there was very simple. It didn't do a lot of the things that a true high-end crossover would do. I mean, a high-end crossover would account for the rising inductance of the speaker itself and try to tame that with what's known as a Zobel. And like I mentioned in the build article, the tweeter is more sensitive. That means it puts out a higher sound pressure level. I think the tweeter on those is 92, whereas the woofer somewhere around 88 maybe. Normally you'd use what's known as an L-pad, which is just a couple of resistors actually. And you would bring that down so that it matches the woofer better. But in my case, I need that higher end more because my hearing is blown particularly up high like that. So I see it as kind of equalization. Okay, so we got 50 plus 30 plus 19 equals 99. What's that 1% left over? It's the minutia I talked about before. It's the very tiny details that so many people get so invested in and study so intricately that really don't make a significant difference to the way a speaker sounds in the end.